Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on the M. Night Shyamalan film Split. Holy fucking shit. This is going to be a spoilery discussion. I'm not going to be doing an in-depth review by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm going to be touching upon the key point, the selling point of this movie, which is gangbusters. It's balls to the wall. I've just been bouncing off the walls ever since seeing this thing, all the way through to completion. It was such a compelling, intriguing movie that really built itself upon the same sort of methodology the original 1984 Ghostbusters was built up from. You know, building a foundation in reality and peppering throughout the course of the story this kind of, lore, if you will, this mythology that as you are taking, sort of fluid forward steps, with every forward step momentum, you are building upon this foundation, and you're building up this lore and building up this mythology, so that by, the third act of the original Ghostbusters, you can swallow that there's a 100-foot marshmallow man plowing through New York City, and you completely, you're sold to it. You absolutely are invested in that. This is real. It's legitimate. And that's very much how I felt about this movie. Up until that final scene, which was for all intents and purposes the Shyamalan twist, if you will, I was very much looking for some kind of a twist. The whole way through the movie, I went into it not knowing very much about it, only having seen maybe like one preview, one trailer, something like that, and I knew it had to do with like multiple personality disorder, some kind of disorder along those lines. James McAvoy, who was a tour de force in this frickin' movie as many different characters. I think we see him as at least 4 throughout the course of the movie. And then there are others who are hinted at, and of course the air quotes beast and things of that nature. He just absolutely blew my ever-loving mind. The performances all the way through the film, even going so far as to say the flashbacks with the sort of main female character, the heroine, if you will, of the film, or protagonist in any case, in dealing with her family, her father, her uncle, and how all of that stuff aligns with how she's able to deal with this very traumatic circumstance of being kidnapped, knocked out, and everything, with 2 other girls who aren't really her friends, and they're trying to band together. All of that stuff. The performances were spectacular all the way throughout the course of the film. And the psychologist, the psychiatric doctor, who is very much on the cutting edge, on the cusp of a whole new sort of ideology and way of approaching mental disorders like this, all that kind of stuff. It's very much through her eyes and her opinions and her observations of McAvoy and things of that nature that really plow you through the entire idea that, it's building up and building up and building up. That it's very much a case of mind over matter. There have been proven examples of this, according to what I've heard. I haven't actually studied up on it, so take it with a grain of salt, where people have been able to achieve certain things like stopping the beat of their heart through a mental sort of, process of meditation and lack of sustenance or measured, sustenance that they intake and all this kind of stuff. And so it's not beyond the stretch of the imagination that certain things can be achieved if you unlock certain aspects of your mind. But even with all that being said, I was ready sort of in the formulation and the speculation going into the film. I was already thinking like, okay, is like the twist going to be that this is all in our main sort of protagonist, female protagonist's mind, that this is her overcoming very sort of symbolically in her mind, the demons that, she had laid bare to her with the interactions between she and her uncle as a child, and was the movie the journey of her inner struggle, and we were going to find out that, when McAvoy is looking in the mirror toward the end after having, several wads of buckshot strewn at him and apparently almost coming away undamaged, I was almost sure we were going to see it fade into the face of our young heroine in the film, and this was going to be very much a metaphor of what she was going through internally, And I was actually somewhat relieved that they stuck to the modus operandi of everything that was going on. What, the multiple personalities, McAvoy's character, he was a real flesh and blood living character. He was real. They do mention the fact that it's almost like, there are certain mental processes that can stem beyond known science or the known capabilities and quantifiable capabilities of the human mind and the human conscious and the soul and all these things that, it's starting to sort of skirt the line of the supernatural. As soon as I heard that term in the film, supernatural, it's almost supernatural, I was sold on it. Even when McAvoy's beastly character is crawling on walls, I'm like, this is interesting. I was applauding them internally that they went to that nth degree, that they followed along with that promise. But I was still, even at that point, I was like, well, this must speak to the idea that none of this is real. It's not a sense of reality. But all of that, all of that was eschewed out the window with the final scene of the film. The idea of the Horde being an answer to Mr. Glass 20 years before. And, there is David Dunn, Bruce Willis, and I almost flotsed myself. I almost shit myself. I'm like, I was like, oh my God, I could not believe it, because Unbreakable is my favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie. It's the first of his movies I ever sought out to see because of its superhero aesthetic, the appreciation of comic books and comic book characters, the history, and turning it very much into a sort of realistic modern mythology, stemming off of modern comic books, which is a sort of modern mythology in and of itself, but taking that to a sort of another bolder step into a sense of realism and all these things, in such a film as Unbreakable. It just left an indelible mark, an impression on my psyche, from the score to the performances to really coming along. Unbreakable is another movie that sticks to that Ghostbusters-esque formula of starting us off in reality, in the reality we are most comfortable within, and then realizing, peppered all throughout the story, are you given hints and whispers and nods and suggestions that there is something greater. We're building on this realistic foundation, and we're becoming supernatural. We're becoming paranormal and all these things. And there's a legitimacy to all of those extravagant leaps. You're not really taking a quantum leap of having to restrain your disbelief. You can accept it because everything you've been shown has led you from point A to point B to that end game where everything, it just makes sense. The puzzle pieces come together. It's not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It's very much the round peg goes in the hole and it's in there loosey-goosey and a snug fit. It's like completely makes sense to your brain processes and without the need for suspension of disbelief. And that's very much what Split was. As I was watching it, every aspect of it, even if I was waiting for a Shyamalan twist, little could I have suspected that it would be a sort of career-spanning, twist in his filmography. I'm not somebody who naturally follows directors. I'm just not, like that. I don't follow directors and actors and actresses. I just want to see certain movies that I feel like they'll appeal to me or they sound interesting to me. And, it could be a Scorsese movie one day, it could be a Shyamalan movie the next, and things like that. There are certain Shyamalan movies, all of my favorites of his movies, there's 4, basically. Unbreakable, The Sixth Sense, Signs, and I actually did like The Village. The Village was one of those cases where I was actually on record before I knew anyone else had any idea, what this movie could amount to. I was basically on record telling all my friends and family this is what happens in the movie. I guarantee it, without seeing anything other than like one trailer. Very much was the case with that movie as it was with Split. I only saw one trailer, and Split, no idea. No idea. Completely wrong on all the speculations. The Village, I nailed every single one of them. So Shyamalan has, without a doubt, without question, come a long way, evolved, and he's been able to do it in a way that circles back on one of, if not the best amongst his works, as far as I'm concerned. And I haven't seen them all, was my point to say. I don't follow directors. I don't know, I'm not, intimately familiar with all of his ins and outs in his directorial capacity. But the movies of his I've greatly enjoyed, even the ones that I thought were predictable, in the case of, well, one of them. So, like, this movie, it blew my mind that they stuck to the core concept by the end, without even knowing that this ties into the Unbreakable universe. When I hit that point, it was like I was just gushing. I was like, oh my God, a return to this world, a return to this form. Mr. Glass, David Dunn, here is a new sort of multi-layered, very intrinsic in all the different, sort of viewpoints and characters and stylistic approaches, to how you can play this kind of a character. McAvoy delivers, and then some, 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 for all of the different, personas he is embodying in this film. The female character, the sort of main protagonist, just absolutely, I felt for her, I feared for her, as well as the two other girls, but mostly her. She was the character who was in the main focus, apart from McAvoy. And just, as I said at the beginning of this video, holy fucking shit. Unbreakable 2 is a thing. It's going to be a thing. I saw people mentioning Unbreakable 2 is probably going to be Shyamalan's next movie. I did not know at that time that Split was directed by him. And I had been watching a video where somebody said, you really got to see Split. Don't let anyone ruin it for you. Don't, stay away from spoilers. Don't go looking at reviews before seeing the film. There's something special with this film. And I was very fortunate that I hadn't encountered any such information before going into it. I was very much completely caught unawares that this was, the grander design of this was its coexistence with the Unbreakable film and that whole universe, and that there is more to come. There is more to build off of what Unbreakable gave us, and this movie expands that, and there's even yet more to come. And I just cannot wait to see. I'm absolutely chomping at the bit to see what is next, what Shyamalan has in store for us along these lines. I'm definitely a fan of the Die Hard films, starring, of course, Bruce Willis. But this return, for me, was that much more tantamount than any stint of his, reprising the role of John McClane. At least this day and age. If it was like 20 years ago, I might have had a different story for you. But, oh man. Oh man. Split. Hell of a fucking movie. Hell of a fucking reveal. Hell of a fucking tie-in. And, hell yes. That's all I can say. I will leave it here. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below. If you've seen Split as well, if you had any idea going into it what you were going to be in store for, if you have a love or hate relationship with Unbreakable, or a meh, I could care less kind of thing, anything goes in the comments below. Whether you loved Unbreakable and loved this movie, could take or leave either of them, just love having that conversation. And so yeah, otherwise that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.